shaman days, like shaman. And then you got Mary Alice heckling in the background. She's heckling me. She's like, oh, well, if you need an ACH and a routing number, I can give you one. Yeah, hers. $30 million. Oh, I just want to tell Charles.
All right, we're going to call the personnel meeting to order, May 19th, 2021. Could somebody close those doors, please? Because we can't hear a thing. Yeah.
It's fine. Just want to let you know.
Thank you, Rebecca. All right. Courtesy of the floor. Does anyone like to address the committee under courtesy of the floor? Seeing no one, we're going to move to review of the county executive's appointments, reappointments. First up, we have the Drug and Alcohol Advisory Board. I am submitting the following individual an appointment to the Drug and Alcohol Advisory Board, Maria Antonia Baraga Mittman. She is to be considered for a 2-year term, which will begin on July 1st, 2021, and end on June 30th, 2023. Is there any questions or issues on that? All right. Does anyone want to move it forward?
So moved.
All right. Move to the meeting tomorrow. Next, we have something else. The executive forwarded, I am submitting the following individual for reappointment to the Lehigh and Northampton Transportation Authority. Kimberly A. Schaefer, 735 Center Street, Bethlehem, PA. Why am I reading addresses? I said I wouldn't do that. Ms. Schaefer is being considered for a 5-year term to begin May 21st, 2021, to end March 2nd, 2026. Are there any questions?
Move it forward.
Okay, motion to move. Then we have the Personnel Commission. 3-1. All right, we have a few for personnel. All right, let's start. I have 3, and what I'll do is I'm going to read them all, and then if somebody wants to pick one out or has a question, just let me know. I am submitting the following individual for appointment to the Personnel Commission, Christy Gessner, Easton, PA. She's being considered for a term to begin May 21st, 2021, and to end December 31st, 2021. She will serve a full 2-year term due to all term expiration dates being the same. Next, I am submitting the following individual for appointment to the Personnel Commission, Matthew G. Mottarelli, Bethlehem, PA. Mr. Mottarelli is being considered for a term to begin May 21st, 2021, and to end December 31st, 2021. Mr. Mottarelli will not serve a full 2-year term due to all term expirations being the same. And then finally, I'm submitting the following individual for appointment to the Personnel Commission, Lisa Youngkin Rex, Easton, PA. Ms. Youngkin Rex is being considered for a term to begin May 21st, 2021, and to end December 31st, 2021. Ms. Youngkin Rex will not serve a full 2-year term due to all term expiration dates being the same. So I have those 3 out there. Are there any questions or comments on those individuals? Mr. Coos?
Just a quick question. How did we wind up with such short-term appointments?
I don't know. Does somebody want to address that from the administration?
filling out the balance of the appointment, and then they'll be submitted for appointment again.
So they were currently vacant, or?
Yes,
this-
that's correct.
This
They're
board has
current-
not
They're
met?
currently vacant.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or issues?
Make a motion.
I
Move 'em.
have a question. I'm
Yes,
sorry.
Ms. Varga Hefner.
Mr. Mutarelli, is he any relation to Danielle Mutarelli, who works for our HR department?
Yes, he is. They are husband and wife.
Is that a conflict in any way? shape,
No, I wouldn't think so.
Well, it's up to you when we vote for him tomorrow night.
I'm not going into anybody's marriage. I just wanted to know, I saw the name.
It's wise,
Not unless they come to my office and ask me.
because they're
to
like
get involved.
snowflakes. Everyone is different.
That's right.
Okay.
It's a legitimate question. I know we're kidding, but I don't see it, since the Personnel Commission doesn't really, it would be recommendations coming from the administration, so, potentially it might, lean that way, but in terms of the State Ethics Act, there's no implication of the State Ethics Act.
The name looked familiar.
Yeah.
I guess the question
It's a
then
good
would be,
question.
do you think it could, if somebody comes in and doesn't get what they want, they're going to say they're going to prejudice it that way?
So you're thinking of the appeals board, right?
Yeah.
The Personnel Commission is really about reviewing policies and regulations that the administration might want to change, so theoretically, the administration approaches the Personnel Commissions for changes in policies. The Personnel Commission then reviews those potential changes, votes upon them, and then we bring them to county council to determine whether those policies will be changed or not. So there's several layers of it.
All right.
Danielle, is he here? Does he want to wait? Does he think it's a conflict? I don't think it's a conflict. Thank you.
All right.
Just
Yeah,
a comment,
move it.
I'd like to,
Mr. McKee.
I just appreciate all the people that volunteer their time to fill these important positions. We need them to step up to the plate.
Thank you. And to Mr. Cusick's point, one of the reasons it's been really difficult for us to find these good citizens to even fill these important positions. And we're long overdue for review of some of these policies and regulations. Some of them are out of date and are seriously in need of updating. So thank you.
So then, thank you for indulging my question, and I'll make the motion to move them forward. if
Second.
that's okay.
All right, so moved. Let me see. Now, we are going to go to the review of the memorandum of understanding between United Steel, Paper, Forestry, Rubber, Manufacturing, Energy, Allied Industrial, and Service Workers International Union, Local 2599, and the County of Northampton. Okay. Anybody, you have in front of you the memorandum of understanding. Does anybody want to speak to it?
Yeah, we do.
All right, go right ahead.
Ms. Stewart King's here to talk about the details, but I would simply note and thank the steelworkers for short. For years, we have been trying to get to a point where we can agree that it's important to have incentives to come and join the staff at Graysdale. And finally, they've agreed with us, and Ms. Stewart King can speak to the merits of it. But I want to thank them specifically because it is going to help us get people in the door.
Okay.
Good afternoon. So it's similar to the one we've already done with the AFSCME union. It's a temporary, we're going to see how it works out at the $500, $250 being initiated first, and then another pay after a 3-month period, 6-month period. So they'll get the other $250.
Yeah, any questions? Question?
The last discussion we had, Mr. Cusack brought up an increase of this. Was this brought forth? What did we do with that? Wasn't there a larger sum of money you were asked at the last time somebody brought this up, Mr. Cusack?
Well, he mentioned, I let him talk, but he mentioned it, he thought it would be higher because of what's out in the market, but we went, Ms. Cusick, go ahead, I'm not going to put words in your mouth. I don't have to do that.
No, I'll just reiterate. My thoughts is that this number is inadequate. I see this amount of a bonus for people to work at Wawa. I love Wawa, but You don't need an RN to work at Wawa. So my sense is that this number, as I did with the previous, should be higher. So that's all.
And this would be retroactive to the January 1st, 2019 date. So if we pass this, anyone who signed on from that date forward would be eligible for this, correct?
No.
No,
3 months.
yeah, 3 months from when we're signing it. That was just referring to the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement.
From April
Right.
30th?
It's beginning May 21st, 2021.
Thank you. That's just.
Until August
So
21st.
that puts it in this current agreement, which was signed on those dates. Thank
Correct.
Number 2.
Is that it, Lloyd?
you. Yes, sir, thank you.
Mr. Lott?
Yeah, we kind of all agreed, I believe, in this acoustic. My feeling, though, was it was such a short window. If we went back to the drawing board and redid it, the 3 months would be up, was my thinking. That's why I went along with it. That being said, have we had any success with these numbers with the Ask Me union?
It's still new. We are seeing employees come on board.
And-
Like everything, we're just waiting for.
And
others.
again, this is a 3-month.
Exactly, a
If
trial
it doesn't
period.
work, we can come back and hit it again, I guess. But I kind of, with some of the bonuses they're throwing out there in the workforce today, it's amazing. So, yeah, I'm for giving it a shot, but we may have to definitely take a look at it again. Thank you.
Mr. Myers?
There are other nursing homes are putting out same kind of or higher numbers for this. Am I correct?
Correct,
So we're in competition with them too.
correct.
The pie is getting smaller, guys. We may have to rethink this soon.
Mr. McGee?
I'd just like to comment on the fact that this is out-of-box thinking. This is one of many ideas that the folks at Graysdale have come up with. We've had employees referring their friends from employee referrals to this now. So the idea started with the folks at the staff at Graysdale. So, and I know we want to take it to the next level, and I'm all for that too. And I like what Kevin, Mr. Lott said, it's only a small window. But thanks for coming up with the idea, because that's where it started.
That's, it.
Yep.
It takes ideas.
All right, thank you.
All right, yeah. I mean, Graysdale's always been a moving target for as long as I can remember. Usually you're trying to keep up with it, and I would agree with what's said. I mean, let's see what happens with this $500, and we'll have to go from there, see what might be next, if that's the case. Are there any other questions, comments?
I have one question.
Ms. Vargo Hefner?
So compared to some of the other people that get sign-on bonuses, or like we've done things for the CNAs or whatever, the likelihood of a nurse coming on and not making completion within 6 months compared to another position is what?
It varies.
I guess I could rephrase. The turnaround of a nurse who comes on board within a 3-month period and a 6-month period is how likely?
Very great. If they make it through the first 3 months, they're normally going to stay the 6 months. You start accruing time, you start to see the pension program. So then we keep hitting them and telling them all the benefits too while they're working here. So we keep at them. They meet with HR. We constantly ask them how they're doing. Is there anything we need to change? So once they get in the door, like the director of nursing will tell you, you just fall in love with Graysdale. So we hope that continues.
Whereas other people in some other positions that we've offered bonuses, such as CNA, maybe they go, it's not for me, not my career.
Correct.
As opposed to people who already have a license and have a career.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Any other? If not, do you have a motion to move this forward to a full vote of
So
council?
moved.
Thank you. All right, are there any other matters to come before the Personnel Committee at this time? Seeing none, call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Adjourned. Now we will roll into Finance Committee with Mr. Bill McGee.
Thank you, Mr. Heckman. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Finance Committee meeting, May 19th. and it is 4:15. Do we have any courtesy to the floor at this time? Seeing none, we will start with the controller reports, and I see that the controller representative is here.
Yes, good afternoon. Tony Basile sends his regrets. He couldn't make today's meeting, so you got the second string again. So we have 3 original reports and 3 follow-ups to go over real quick. The first one would be the Department of Corrections Community Corrections Program. This is an agreed-upon procedures report. The state requires us to do a full audit every 4 years, and in the interim years, we have to do an agreed-upon procedures report, which is a little scaled back. This is the year we will be doing the full one, just for your information. The findings, and with an agreed-upon procedure, findings aren't necessarily negative. They're just what we found based on the procedures that we looked at. We looked at receipts for review. We found one small minor exception with regard to that, with regard to the deposit slip that didn't have the right breakdown of cash checks. And other than that, everything was pretty much routine with that. We also looked at the checks that are given to the inmates, and we found that they're supposed to sign on to when they get their checks. In three instances, they did not. I found out that that's because that in instances where an inmate is pulled out of the program and put back into the jail, they don't sign the thing, and it gets put into their inmate personal property account, and that's what I found out had happened there. This is if I would have written this, I would have written it a little bit differently to make that clear. That's not necessarily a negative thing. And we had no problem with any of the other things with deductions that come from those checks and go to different departments for fines, fees, and that type of thing. Are there any questions on the Community Corrections Program AUP? Okay, great. We'll move on to the Records Improvement Fund. Now, this one isn't a performance audit, so it's a little bit longer than the others. It goes into a good bit more detail, and we have findings that are usually negative, and we follow up on those every 6 months. Now, the Records Improvement Funds are funds that were established by the state that certain departments are allowed to charge extra fees. That money is supposed to be used for improvement of records, automation, the like, and so we audit that sometimes. We haven't audited this in a bit of time, so we felt it was time to look at it again. There were a couple of findings in here. The first one being that when the law was established, the county was supposed to come up with a commission or a committee to create a plan, an automation plan, a records improvement plan, which they did, and they followed the plan for a number of years, but the plan has become outdated and obsolete. It mentions microfiche and things that are just not used anymore. So we felt that it was time for the committee to reestablish themselves, relook at the plan, and write a new one. And that was our first recommendation, and Steve Barron had responded, he agreed. And so that they will do that, they will reconstitute the committee and look at that plan again, and we will follow up on that in 6 months. Okay? And the second finding was we found an issue with the Register of Wills fee schedule. They were charging a certain fee that wasn't comparing to the fee schedule. We found that the fee that was charged was correct, which is good, but the fee schedule was wrong, and that needed to be corrected. And before the end of our audit, Gina Gibbs, the Registrar of Wills, actually fixed that, so that's already resolved. We won't even need to follow up on that one. And we had one issue that was actually resolved during field work, and that was the Director of Fiscal Affairs was not listed as an authorized signer for this fund and had authorized a couple invoices, so they needed to put him on as an authorized signer, so that was for the future. And that's that report. Do we have any questions on this one? Nope.
Not seeing any.
Good. The next one is one of our agreed-upon procedures reports, which we do. We do these all the time to prevent fraud. We look at any department that collects any kind of cash or checks, just making sure that the internal controls are good. We do these every 4 years in every single department that collects these kinds of funds. And This one is completely clean. I don't think you'll find anything on this one where there were problems with the segregation of duties or receipts that were not, any errant problems with any of those. So this one was quite routine. Any questions on that one? Okay.
Mr. Heckman?
Just one question. If the voter registration office gets, especially now we've just had this round, they get cash. Somebody says, I'm going to pay this in cash. How is that, what's the process on that? I mean,
Well, we document all processes with regard to cash. Generally, we look for segregation of duties of the person that actually receipts that cash as opposed to the person that deposits that cash. And if it's going into the general fund, then it's already segregated because those accounts are reconciled in fiscal affairs separate from the people that actually collected the cash. So that's what we basically look for. We look
Right.
for making sure that all the duties are segregated so somebody can't commit and conceal a crime.
all right, and that's, and you know, your process is clean. I guess, Mr. Barron, like anybody in that office, if somebody says, well, I want to pay a check or I have cash, when they bring in their financials or candidate things, so anybody can take the money. So what's step two?
So step two.
Let's say I give you $100.
Step two is they do a deposit slip. For example, in the administration office, weights and measures, they leave their money with Suzanne, who sits in the front. And there's a reconciliation sheet that then goes into revenue. So someone from there, especially when they're in the building, I believe they do it daily. They come up with the cash, they have the receipt as to what they take in and what it's for, and then it's prepared and run through the register and put into the general fund in that way.
So in the office, who is ultimately responsible? Because there's always somebody who's ultimately, in the election office, who would you go to? Who's ultimately responsible for ensuring that the cash collected is the cash that's turned over?
It would be either Amy Cozy or Amy Hess, depending on who's there that day.
All
I
right.
would say the authorized signer. The authorized signer on the bank account is the one that takes
So
responsibility.
they're authorized signers, I would assume, the two of them?
Yes.
Okay, that's all. I was just curious. Thank you.
And every process is different depending on the department, depending on the composite of the department. So saying what happens in a given department is not necessarily what's going to happen in every department. So
Sure.
we have to look at the process in total and determine if it's adequate for that
Yeah.
particular department.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because they're not really, some departments get cash all the time. It's an ongoing thing throughout the year, a check, but they generally only get cash certain times of the year.
Right.
And they're not really an office that's geared for like being used to getting cash except at certain times. So I was just curious about the process since you were
And certain
here.
departments only take checks, and then that's
Yeah.
a little less,
Oh, yeah,
less
no, the
control
check-
over that, but you can
Checks,
still. you
cash can
s-
get funky, we all know
You
that.
can, yeah, you can still have things with checks, but the controls are different over that, so,
Yeah,
okay?
thank you.
Okay. Now I have, real quick, 3 follow-ups. We have Recorder of Deeds Agency Fund. And again, these follow-ups we do on performance audits. So if we've issued a recommendation, we look at it every 6 months to make sure that they're implementing our recommendation. And in the Recorder of Deeds Department, we have an issue with regard to the Policies and Procedures Manual needing to be updated. The Recorder of Deeds agrees with that finding. Unfortunately, they have yet had the time and opportunity to comply. And this is a second follow-up, and we will perform follow-up again in 6 months to review the status. And this is understandable with regard to the COVID and the staffing that people have. It's not something that is always available, and so it has yet to be done, but we will follow up again on that one in 6 months.
Thanks for reporting on that.
Okay. And then we have 2 more. Now, these, generally, we only do 3 follow-ups on these, and then what we say after the third one, if they have not complied with our recommendation, we say that the department is accepting the responsibility for not implementing our recommendation. But in this instance, because of COVID, we stretched it out to a 4th follow-up on the next 2. The first one is a tax billing audit, and that is almost the exact same thing as the deeds one. That's an issue with regard to the process not being properly documented in their fiscal policies and procedures manual. And unfortunately, once again, they still haven't had the opportunity to do that, and so we will not be going back and doing a 5th follow-up, but I did talk to the revenue manager. She fully wants to do so. She fully understands the need to do so, and she will do so as soon as she has the first opportunity to document that process. So we will be walking away from that one, but that's our fourth follow-up on that one.
Go ahead. Oh, Bill was the man, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I'm somewhat confused. You said you weren't gonna follow up, or you
We
were?
will
gonna
not follow up on that, because like I said, we only usually do 3. We did a 4th one, and they still have not implemented that particular finding. And again, if you know the Revenue Division, they do a lot of, it's a busy office, and they just haven't had an opportunity to document that process. And I do know Nancy well enough to know that she really wants to do so and will do so at her first opportunity. But again, our procedure is just to do 3 follow-ups and then move on.
Are they gonna notify you when they do it? You know it's
I
gonna-
will
you-
talk
it'll
with
be
her, and
approved next year.
I will talk with her and say that when you do that, please let us know, because that we can know.
That's a great idea.
Yeah.
That was my purpose,
Yeah.
make contact and make sure we know it was done, that's all.
Yeah, the problem is that if we go and do too many follow-ups, we're just doing follow-ups all the time, and it's a matter of a department has to at some point take the responsibility for not implementing one of our recommendations. You know, our recommendations are just that, they're just recommendations and not requirements. And so our position is that if they don't do it after 3, we just say, it's on you, so.
Then it's on our responsibility to make sure it's done, so.
It is, and that's fine, and I will follow up with her and make sure that when she does do that, that she lets me know about that.
I think that's the right approach to have. If we're not gonna follow up, it's gonna be them to get back to us, and then if they don't get back to us, we'll let the hammer of Thor fall on them.
Okay.
And there's another question, but on Mr. Myers' question, it'd be nice when they let you know, let us
Let you
know.
guys know. Okay.
Mr. Heckman.
I was just gonna say, maybe for finance, we should put a tickler in that 6 months from now, we'll bring this topic back up in the finance committee.
We'll ask the clerk
And
to-
see what progress has been made.
Well, you know, if you want, I mean, because what it sounds like is just another follow-up. So if you want, I can do a 5th. There's not a problem. I can put it on our schedule. It's not our policy isn't etched in stone. So if you want, I can tell Nancy that in 6 months, we are gonna follow up again on this one.
Well, I did hear you say you didn't want to do another one, so I think we should
Well,
throw the
like I said,
basketball to them. I mean, it's your department, it's
Right.
it's Tony Basile, Mr. Basile. and-
I'll talk to Tony and see how he wants to approach it, and I'll let you guys know what we decide on that.
We just wanna be aware, that's all.
Yep, not a problem. Okay, and the last one is the vision benefits audit. That is another one where we went to a 4th follow-up, but in this instance, this was nothing more than just a benefit that was listed in the HR policy manual that just didn't match the current procedure, and they just needed to change that, and it did take a little while for them to get to that, but they did get to that one. That corrective action has been taken, and no further follow-up is necessary on that one. So that one's definitely done, okay? And that's all I have. Is there any questions?
Any questions? Did you get any reports on the new Gatsby rules or any, has any?
Well,
Or is
I
it
know there
too
are new
new?
Gatsbys, and in fact, as I understand it, there was some training today in fiscal affairs on some of that stuff, and I was invited to attend, but we already were doing another webinar in our own office, so, but yeah, we are.
Just finding out all the new,
I'm sure that the county is on top of all of that. That generally comes out of the fiscal affairs area. We get involved with the GASBs when we do and that's why you haven't seen us for a few months, because in the first 3 months of the year, we work with the external auditors on the external audit exclusively. And that's when we generally deal with a lot of that. And so a lot of people are on top of compliance with GASB around here. Okay.
Mr. Kusick.
And then if I could just follow up, what is the status of the external audit?
As I understand it, the draft is currently being worked on by Mary Alice, and it should be out by the end of I think she's shooting for the end of the month, but don't let me speak for her. Steve? I think she's, because she actually called me yesterday with a couple questions on trial balances that we created, so I know she's putting in the final touches on it.
When the external auditors, we actually in fiscal affairs pulled all the information for them. They did not come on site this year, so they gave us a list of the testing materials. And then they had to do some additional follow-up because they didn't pull the testing materials because of the new guidance with regard to COVID. That being the case, it took a little bit longer. So Mary Alice did just get the financial statements like a week ago, and now the draft report gets done with the narratives. My guess is the end of the month, we should have all that done. And we have the extension for the financial reporting from the federal government and all of our standards organizations. So we should be perfectly fine. And filing and submitting again in a timely manner. I believe we also have an additional month that we probably will not need for the
KFIR.
the federal
CFA.
CFA. Thank you. Sorry, I couldn't think of it. Sorry.
I can think of nothing else. Are there any other questions? Okay.
Penny, thank you very much.
Thank you
for
very
your
much.
help.
Have a good
Yep.
evening.
Okay, Mr. Barron? Would you be so kind to just answer any questions or review this budget amendment that we have here?
Absolutely.
Our discussion.
So the highlights from Hamlet, from the general fund, none of the money impacts the fund balance. As a matter of fact, the fund balance increased $199,400. So the biggest number, the biggest move in fiscal affairs and information services is the $450,000. And that is for one bill. It goes to Microsoft. We had to update our Microsoft licenses because when you buy a whole bunch of new devices for wireless and for all of the remote polyclarity, all the extra equipment that requires Microsoft Windows, you have to tithe your income to Mr. Gates. So that is what that is. And then the emergency management is all of the Sure Up money, as well as the $40,000 that county council so graciously accepted a couple meetings ago. And the human service money is all basically the standard traditional budget amendments that we have because the state runs on the fiscal year and we operate on the calendar year. So it's a little bit more involved this year, primarily because of COVID and the allocations. I think Ms. Wondolowski will tell you they did 6-month intervals this year based on what revenue was going to look like and where we were going to be with the state budget. So while it was a little nerve-wracking, things seem to be A-okay in that regard.
Anybody have any questions? Okay, motion to move, full council?
Motion.
Thank you. So moved. Next, we have a resolution for the Northampton County Home Rule Charter, Section 202-10, providing that the county council shall have, among others, the following powers: to accept on behalf of the county any gifts of real property and to provide for the acceptance by any agency on behalf of this county of other gifts. And do we have anybody from the administration that would like to talk about this in further detail, or? I don't want to get ahead of myself.
Mr. McGee, were you talking about the AAA donation?
Yes,
Okay. We had
Thank you.
That's okay. We had a county, someone who resided in the county who recently passed away, and in lieu of flowers, the family wanted contributions to go to the Northampton County Area Agency on Aging. And so we were bringing it to you all for approval.
okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Question,
Thanks.
question.
So there's no dollar amount here. Is this before the money is collected? We have to say that we can collect it? Is that the deal?
So they had to put it in the obituary, so if there are funds that roll in now from folks, we will be able to accept that. So to date, there were no funds collected.
Okay, so then, will we have to accept
No,
those funds
this
later?
will allow us,
to
this
do
will
that?
allow us to accept $5 or $500, yes.
Just asking. And So I want to extend my sympathy to the family.
Thank you.
And the gratitude for the gift.
Absolutely.
and memory.
Thank you.
Mr. Heckman?
Yeah, and I agree with Tara, and our sympathy. Could you get a memo to us, though, when it's all said and done, about how much money came
Sure.
in? I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That's it.
Any other questions? Motion to move? And thank you for the, okay. The full council. Okay. Okay, we're going to take a brief pause here because we have to, some IT issues to, well, not issues.
No, she has to touch a button. It goes to sleep. Or not.
Okay, we are up and running.
They are.
Thank you. Okay. So next, we have the Lehigh Northampton Airport Authority presentation at this time. And you have a resolution in front of you, and there he is.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good to see everyone again. Tom Stout with the Lehigh Northampton Airport Authority. Also joining me this evening is Todd Kwan, who's our Director of Finance. So just in front of you, we have a presentation and just want to run through a couple of slides, but really the purpose of coming before the Finance Committee this evening is to seek a resolution from Council approving the financing of our terminal connector project, which we've spoken about before. Critical project. We're beginning to move forward with construction on that, so we want to bring this forward. We certainly appreciate County Executive McClure's support of the project, and obviously some members here have heard quite a bit about the project at board meetings and so forth. But to just give you a sense of kind of where we are, you can see the dark line representing the year 2020, and really hovering around 25,000 passengers through Lehigh Valley Airport each month, significantly below where we were in that purple line in 2019. But you can see I hope you can see on the screen the yellow line, and that is 2017. Those were our monthly traffic numbers in 2017. And you can see as we went from February to March to April, we are now back essentially to 2017 passenger traffic numbers, and certainly hoping to sustain that. But the reason that's critical is because the TSA determined that the airport needed a third screening throughput lane in our checkpoint when we were in 2017, based on the throughput. So we are back, and of course, long before that, we were working on a design for the project. You can see in February 2020, we had a line of people queuing out of that existing two-lane checkpoint. And April, and of course just this month, it's still the same picture. We have people still crowding outside of the passenger queuing area, out of the checkpoint, just based on throughput. We don't have the throughput volume through the checkpoint. The other thing about the checkpoint is this is an area that was built in 1974. It's a part of a hallway or a tunnel connecting the two terminal buildings underground, if you've not been through the facility. It is physically constrained. In 2019, the TSA approached the airport about receiving the latest generation of security screening equipment. They came out to do the measurements, and the equipment would not fit. So we are physically constrained, and if we take a look at some of the other airports in the Commonwealth that meet standards and TSA standards, you can see the very open nature of them, the fact that there's plenty of space for passenger queuing, particularly with social distancing. Also, the red arrow points out a piece of equipment, and you can see people standing around it and the height of that equipment. And again, when we're talking about the current generation of screening technology that TSA is looking to deploy here, we just don't have room at the end to get this in place. So the long-term solution is the project we've been talking about since 2019 in terms of this form. And it gets us a number of things. So it gets us not only the third lane, but a fourth lane of screening for the latest generation of equipment. We have new vertical circulation equipment, meaning escalators and elevators. We really don't have the redundancy of vertical transportation in the building today that we need. We were also able to take advantage, if you will, of the pandemic and look at air purification and air circulation in that space to ensure that we're protecting the workers there as well as all of the customers moving through that facility. And of course, separating inbound and outbound passenger flow. So at this point, project is $29 million. We've already secured $7 million in state funding. We have some federal dollars that we're using as well towards this project. Again, it gets us to 4 lanes of equipment. The overflows, we saw the pictures of people crowding outside of the queuing area. And it's a 2-year project delivery. Once we get the project started, we still have 24 months approximately of construction to get this project completed. And so really the next step is the financing component, which we have a lot of those elements in place. And it's, again, required by the Municipality Authorities Act for us to be here and request this permission to fund the project. So I have Todd. I'm going to ask him, and maybe you want to adjust the microphone, but
Just a little bit, Tom.
yeah, it's not all of us.
And I'll actually go anti-Charlie Brown for you. Good afternoon, everyone. Before I even talk about the slide, the one reason that I wanted to kind of take a minute to thank you again for the CARES funding that you gave us. The last time we were here, you gave us $250,000 to help us with some of our infrastructure for our IT. And this project is really kind of our way of saying thank you, because this is getting us towards self-sufficiency. The best way to kind of say thank you for a gift is to say, we're good, you helped us get to a better place, and this project is going to take us there. So when we talk about this project here, as Tom already alluded to, it's a $29 million project, but there's a lot of grants in place, and some of these grants have a long kind of timeline as far as when you receive the funding. So we secured up to $8 million in bridge financing for that, so we can kind of keep the project going, bridge that, and then pay it back once we get the grant. We also secured another $15 million of fixed loan. So that'll be after the initial 2-year period, that $15 million will be a fixed loan that we're going to amortize for 25 years. We're going to be using interest only for the first 2 years because of the construction. So interest only, we're using prime, which is currently 3.25, and it's tax exempt, so we get 83% of that, so it's roughly 2.7%. The counties have no risk. Again, like I said earlier, we got that CARES money from you the last time I was here. I think that's the first time in over 20 years that we've received any operational grants, and I want to go the next 20 years without receiving any operational grants. Certainly, thank you again, but we want to be we want to be self-sufficient. It's critical for us long-term to kind of maintain our operations, and that's our focus, to be self-sustaining. So again, the county assumes no risk at all. The main reason we're here is because of the Municipal Authorities Act. Whenever you take on any new debt, to make sure it's not for a casino or something that could jeopardize the health, safety, and welfare of the residents. So again, it's just more housekeeping. It's not so you have to co-sign on any of this loan. Again, it's going to be secured by the operational revenue of LNAA, so we're in a good place with that. And again, our board has already kind of approved this. This is just you saying, hey, it's good for the airport, it's not going to jeopardize operations, and the residents are okay with that. So with that, I think that's the last slide.
Yep. So now it's just really open for questions, if there's any questions. Sure, Mr.
I know Ms. Fargo Hefner has a question, but I just want to ask one thing. About a year ago, you came to us, and for, it was about a year ago, I think it was a year. We were in the courtroom at the time.
Yes.
Courtroom 1. And I know you did some risks to save some employees. How did that work out? Or were you planning on commenting on that tonight?
So the comment really is that it worked out very well. We kept all of our employees working during the pandemic, which we're extremely proud of. Certainly, when we were here the last time, it was really talking about shifting some of that debt service, and we were happy that we were able to do that because that really pushes that out a couple years for us, and that gives us time. As you see on the chart, the industry is starting to recover, and as Todd points out, getting us back to self-sustaining and not reliant upon CARES Act funding or other supplemental funding that isn't a long-term solution for us.
So all
So
that training and those employees, you cap, because you're going to have a busy summer, we're
it's,
predicting,
let's
right?
hope, let's hope,
Okay.
yes.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
If we could sneak back to the last slide, and I don't know if I heard you correctly, but did you say, or you didn't say, but he said that there's federal money in this as well, or no?
I said that. So we also have, as part of the land sale, we do have some restricted funds that we received from the FAA. And those funds are, as I said, restricted. They can only be used for very specific capital project purposes. This project has been approved for that, so we have $5 million of those federal FAA restricted funds that can be used, and we have authorization to use those. So those will be used towards the project as well.
And did you state the timeline? The completion would be 2023?
2023, yes. So it's a 2-year project delivery. So it's about 24 months. Really, that's going to depend on what Mother Nature has in store for us for the next couple of winters and what sort of construction season we have.
Okay, thank you, that's all.
Mr. Heckman.
Yeah, I just want to say, I've been on the board last year, and it's been my privilege. I've served on a lot of boards, authorities, commissions over the years, and still do. But I want council to know that from my perspective, both with what Tom and Todd do, this is probably one of the best run organizations I've ever seen. I mean, these folks are on top of everything. I'm sorry. Somebody's going to yell at me. I didn't put my mic on. This is one of the best operations I've ever seen, and it's top notch. And you know, I just want to take this time because we gave them CARES Act money, but and also now we're going to secure this, even though there's no liability to the county. I just want to tip my hat because 2020 was particularly bad, as I know I was there at the meetings, particularly bad for you folks. And so, I mean, the fact that you weathered this, and it looks very much like we're going to be coming back. And I think now and then, somebody once said to me, Ron, do you ever praise anybody other than looking for problems? So I'm taking this time to praise someone, but to praise the organization. Yeah, you have a good board. I think all your people do a great job, and I've been impressed ever since I've been involved with how professional the operation has been. So I just wanted to say that to you, but also to council as well.
Certainly appreciate that comment. Certainly appreciate the leadership of our board. I can't thank our staff enough for the hard work that they do, and given the circumstances last year as well, just tremendously stepped up to the plate, and so thank you.
That was real helpful, the PowerPoint presentation. There may be some questions, but before, we have the Planning Commission tonight, too. There's some contracts in between both presentations, but and I know a lot of people know the airport now is getting into some serious freight movement. Can you just give us a little, little tidbit of where that's going and how much of that is your budget or your.
Sure, and I think,
Where
we
it's
can get
going.
into the numbers. Todd has some of the numbers about, if we want to get specifics about the dollars and cents of cargo. But what I would tell you is that certainly cargo has become a big component of activity for the airport, and that's really, again, filling consumer demand in the region. And we saw that a lot in 2015 and 2016 when Amazon started service at the facility. They're moving about 80% of the cargo coming in and out of the airport right now. FedEx makes up the other 20%. And again, not unlike the project we're talking about here, we're full at the end. So we actually expanded our air cargo apron. In airport vernacular, an apron is where aircraft park, and that's where they're serviced and loaded and unloaded. We had to add a 6th position 2 years ago to that apron, and again, we're still full. So the challenge we have is that we don't have enough facilities. We don't really have a cargo building to support the existing activity, let alone what other demand might be there for cargo. And I know Becky Bradley from the Planning Commission is here this evening. We've been talking a lot as a region about the need for infrastructure development and what's required and sort of looking at that. But certainly cargo is an important element for us. And certainly part of our charge as a federally obligated airport is to make sure that we are able to provide the facilities and infrastructure for users, for people who are interested in serving the region. And that's really what we've done, what I think our master plan for ABE has done is looked at the demand in sort of a regional context and identified the fact that cargo is going to continue to grow in this region, and we need to be able to support that activity.
That helped you through the pandemic though, too, right?
Certainly having that additional activity is helpful. Again, a lot of the funds that we make through that really are to support cost of the airfield. And, Todd, you can certainly talk about.
And I'll just chime in there. I mean, if you think about our airport, excuse me here, and I'll go, mask goes, Glenn. If you think about our airport, probably 2/3 of the actual flights are passenger, but the weight, which is how we get paid, 60% of that is cargo. So the weight, which is, so 60% of our airfield is funded by our cargo carriers. And when you think about sharing that cost, which is what we do on the airfield, it's able to lower the cost for the passenger carriers, which means it makes it a little bit more attractive to, it's kind of like, it gets it a little bit lower so they feel a little bit better about coming here because their costs are lower. So that cargo cost is actually subsidizing the cost, as Tom indicated, of our passenger costs, which will ultimately give us the ability to bring in more passenger flights. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. It's nice to see you here and just to get a little bit of information because we don't normally regularly. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Any questions from the board? Motion to move this resolution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next on the agenda is contracts. We have the Abacus Corporation contract in front of you.
Excuse me while I lower this a little bit. Hello. Good
Hello.
evening, everybody. Danielle Mutarelli, Acting Deputy Director of Human Resources. We recently ran into an expiration, well, it's upcoming, June 14th, our current temporary personnel staffing services contract will be expiring. So what we decided to do, put out an RFP, see what kind of responses we would get back. We actually received 5 responses. We interviewed 3 companies. The reason we chose those 3 companies to interview is because they actually had local facilities for that local support aspect that we were looking for. Out of all 3 of the companies that we interviewed, the company that provided us with the best presentation, the most uplifting information, especially after the last year that we've had regarding temporary personnel staffing, was Abacus Corporation. So we actually have 2 representatives from Abacus here with us today, Michelle Mazzaro and Trey McGee. So I will hand it over to them.
Good afternoon, I'm Michelle Massaro.
And I'm Trey McGee.
And we're with the Bacchus Corporation. We are a 78-year-old continuously operating company, staffing company, headquartered out of Baltimore, Maryland, with 5 offices here in Pennsylvania, including an office in Allentown, right on Hanover Avenue. We've been in this area for about 6 years and have done a lot of work with private sector organizations. So we're super excited to gain the opportunity to support you all, support the county with your temporary staffing needs.
Any questions? Thank you for bidding. Oh, Mr.
Yeah, just
Cusick.
quickly, I'm not sure if you can answer it, if the deputy director can. Where typically do we need additional staffing?
So our primary staffing is clerical. We have staffed in other departments, but most of the time it would be data entry, filing, your typical day-to-day clerical tasks.
Okay.
Bill?
Yep. Mr. Heckman?
Quickly, maybe even Lamarca. This has the standard contract language in it where either party can if things don't work out, because it's a 3-year, and I just wondered,
Yes.
okay, that's all. Thank you, that was it.
And we accepted those terms, so yes, we're
Okay,
comfortable.
no, I thought it was, but you always should check. Since it's an extended contract, so that's all. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you for presenting, and thank you for bidding. Thanks for helping us.
Thank you.
Motion to move? Thank you. The next contract is, I'm sorry, this is the discussion regarding, contract, 13 contracts, Article 13. We have the County Commissioners Association of PA. In front of you, it's the P Corp and the contract. Anyone from the administration would like to give us any information on this, or it is what it is? It's the premium, and it's what?
Sure.
It's a annual premium?
You need to have insurance.
Oh, we understand that, yes.
Yeah, that's it.
That's my report.
And that's who we had, that was our incumbent,
That
correct?
concludes my report. Yes.
Is
it's
that our
been-
incumbent?
It has been a number of years since
Okay.
we've gone out to the market to
Yep.
see what else is out there. But yes, they're the incumbent.
Okay. Okay, motion to move? Questions, motion to move, thank you. Next, Fairfield Laundry Machinery. We have a proposal for Fairfield Laundry Machinery in front of you.
Would
Well,
you
that-
ask a question?
Do you have a question? Well, the administration will. Mr. Emile will answer.
Yeah, so this is for the laundry facility at Graysdale. They're having some problems with one of the equipment or the rail and sorting machines over there. I believe the equipment is 30-plus years old, and this is the same company that had installed the original equipment. It's kind of a proprietary system. So I know procurement had checked with the solicitor's office in terms of whether or not we could just award directly back to Fairfield since they had done the original installation, and they confirmed that that would be appropriate. Sole source procurement, yes.
Okay, any other questions? I don't have any.
What's the time frame on this?
I believe it'll get done this summer.
Yeah, how long? Are they gonna be out?
I don't know the specifics, but I'm sure the.
We'll get that answer for you, Councilman.
We're talking about, the cleaning of the clothing and everything else. We're gonna have a problem, are we gonna have to outsource something? I'm sorry. Microphone's off, in case we have to do some sort of temporary outsourcing, because that might have to go into bid too. We get an answer for us for that.
Yes, we'll get the details on that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. Anyone else? Thank you, Mr. Emile. Motion to move?
So moved.
Thank you. Okay. Flyway Excavation Incorporated is before you here. And we have from Mr. Cope, Parks and Recreation, Fry's Run Stream Restoration, Division of Parks and Rec, sum of $27,583. Excellent record with stream restoration projects, and we feel extremely comfortable working with them on the Fry's Run Stream Restoration Project. Any comments, Mr. Emile?
Yeah, so just a little background on this. This dates back to one of the hurricanes that we got hit with back in 2018 that severely damaged some of the stream bank on Fry's Run, right adjacent to our park there. So this project would essentially just be to rebuild some of the mud sill cribs that are in place to help hold the stream bank in place and make it more resilient to future storms.
Okay, motion to move. Questions? Questions. Mr. Rinsky.
So I see Kate Evil was CC'd on this. Is this something that the Wildlands Conservancy is part of?
Yes, Wildlands was assisting us with the design and the bidding process on it. So Kate's been working with us throughout the entire process.
Okay, great. And that's all the questions I have. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Questions, comments? Mr. Myers?
Where exactly is this located at?
It's at the Fries Run Park in Williams Township, right off of Royal Manor Road.
Mr. Kusick
Oh,
hangs out there.
okay, okay.
It's between Royal Manor and Coffeetown Road.
Yeah, that all of a sudden it hit me like a ton of bricks. I knew what it was then. Okay. I had to, yeah. A
Thank
lot of
you.
work was being done for there.
Thank you, Mr. Emili. Motion to move.
So moved.
Next, we have the JMT, Johnston, Merriman, and Thompson Incorporated. And contract. Summary is $140,000. RFP for the Mincy Lake Park Recreational Rehabilitation Project, Division of Parks and Rec. Recommend that the project be awarded to JMT, not to exceed $140,938. Mr. Emili.
Yeah, so we had put out an RFP a couple months ago for engineering design services for overall improvements at the entire Mincy Lake Park. So now that the work on the dam restoration has been completed, we're now looking to make it a better place for our park patrons to visit. So this project would design new pavilions, restrooms, lay out other park amenities such as benches, upgrade the lighting, a whole variety of projects just to, you know, make overall improvements to the Mincy Lake area.
Any questions, comments?
Just a comment, there's things in this job that I never thought I would ever see. What the heck is a bog turtley survey?
Bog turtles.
It is
I don't really need the answer, but you know, like.
So they don't disrupt them.
Yeah, it's a required environmental,
They need it, right?
yeah, it's a required environmental study.
That's like a thing.
Are you
Bog
anti?
turtle.
A bog
Are you
turtle's
anti?
No,
bog
I
turtle?
just, you know, you never.
They'll stop a
think you'll
project.
see certain,
bog
you know,
turtles.
never saw
Yeah,
a bog
every
Bog turtles,
environmental
I never seen you.
every environmentalist has one in their back pocket, right? So you could just bring that out. Mr. Spadoni knows what I'm talking about.
Are the folks from JMT in front of us tonight?
No, they are not.
Okay.
Well then, I'll make a motion to move it forward if nobody has any other questions.
Okay, motion to move forward. Ms. Fargo Hefner. That's all the contracts. Thank you, Mr. Emili.
Thank you. Bridges and bog
Okay.
turtles, my job.
All right, next up, we have the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission with their presentation. Mr. Greg Sabrowski, the Honorable Greg Sabrowski.
You got that right. I sat in those chairs. You got to allow me a little levity. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be here, Mr. County Executive. And I want to open up with a couple comments. Today was an award day, and I want to congratulate Northampton County for receiving a state award for your rental support. And you, County Executive McClure, it was an exemplary program which helped some really needy families with rental assistance. And also, that was a wonderful award. I want to blow our own horn today. The Lehigh Valley Planning Commission just received the Governor's Award today for its future LV plan, which is a regional plan for this area. It's the roadmap to answer some of the questions and concerns that we all have, I know, on our fingertips and on our lips here. You mentioned, Mr. McGee, your concern about warehousing and so on. That is a hot button issue. We can show you some statistics and what's going on in that area. Well, we definitely, the Future LV Award was in competition with all planning agencies throughout the state, local governments and so on. And we got the Governor's Award. So I'm extremely proud of the professional work being done led by Becky Bradley, our staff of professionals, And I want to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your support. Since 1961, this county government has supported the Regional Planning Agency. And without your support, we would obviously have a much difficulty. We get support from you and Lehigh County in the way of financial support. And the charge today is becoming increasingly difficult because we in the Lehigh Valley now are being inundated with record-setting development, unprecedented in the history of the Lehigh Valley. It has its pluses and its minuses. And the key point here that we have to keep in mind as decision makers is to balance this pressure for development, yet maintain the quality of life that we all cherish in Lehigh Valley. That's our charge, and that's what we at the Planning Commission and our professional staff are dealing with daily. If you look at the reports and if you look at the plans we review, it's staggering what the numbers are. And it's all across this county, all across your townships. And you're getting a picture of Northampton counties, but you'll get the larger picture there in that report. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our officers. Steve Glickman is the vice chair. Well, you're usually to the left, but
To our left this time.
He's our vice chair, and Steve, I welcome Steve for any comments he'd like to make. And we have our treasurer, Pam Pearson, and right here. Without further ado, would any of you, ladies and gentlemen, like to make a comment before our director, Becky Bradley, goes with the presentation? Go ahead, Steve.
Thank you. I've been on the commission for over 3 years. It's been quite an experience, and I've also served both Northampton and Lehigh County. I actually moved across the border. By county, right. I was actually chair when I moved, which immediately allowed me to not be chair anymore. But next year, hopefully, with everything going fine, I'll be chair again. I would just like to add something that the Airport Authority did not toot their horn on, is that the work that they're proposing and the additions they're doing are going to be LEED certified additions, which from a sustainability standpoint is the gold standard for development. And I think they should be viewed also as a leader, that they are going above and beyond to create buildings that consume less energy, that are healthier for all the travelers going through the building, which obviously they have some issues within their current situation. And, it's bold steps like that that all municipal and private developers should be going. And I would just like to congratulate them, even though they've left, for that initiative on their part. Thank you. And Pam Pearson, say hello.
Hi, everyone. I'm Pam Pearson. I have been on the board since 2013 as a planning commissioner. I'm also vice chair of the Tatamy Borough Council. And speaking from personal experience, not being a commissioner, but the things and the assets that the commission brings to small municipalities who don't have a big staff. We literally have 2 people in our office, sample ordinances, map reviews, participating in the multi-municipal, the COGS, the quarterly meetings that we have to get all the municipalities together have been a huge benefit for a small borough like Tatamy. Yep.
Thank you.
And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our director, Becky Bradley, with the presentation for this evening.
Thank you, Chairman Zabrowski.
Thank you, and thank you for having us here this evening. You all know I can't go anywhere without showing you numbers and data, and that's very important because at that commission we have a philosophy of starting with the facts first. And so you received in the mail, I believe, last month, a copy of the annual report, which aggregates everything that's happening in the Lehigh Valley and different things that are going on. But it's important for you to know specifically, as your county planning commission, what's happened in Northampton County over the last year. And the good news is I can let you know what's happened over the first quarter of this year as well. You had a record amount of development in 2020, and I'll get to the 2021 piece in just a minute. But over 250 51 reviews were done by the LVPC and the LVPC commissioners on behalf of Northampton County. That's in some cases 100 more than in the last decade or so. So it tells you that there's a lot of activity happening here. Another key point to this slide is the fact that the amount of development proposals exceeds the amount of what we call the simple stuff, those simple lot line adjustments, a neighbor needs a couple feet for a shed or something like that. So that tells you that the development pressure is intensifying, and as a result of that, our municipal governments here in Northampton County are really starting to rise to the challenge. There was a record number of municipal ordinance changes proposed, and we're required to review those under the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code. So that was everything from zoning ordinance changes to subdivision and land development ordinance changes, and the community is really coming to the table and trying to rise to the challenge of the pressure in front of them. So that's something that you should be very, very proud of, and I know the county are you a council or commission as of today?
Council.
When does that happen? Sorry, I don't want to offend you.
That's okay. Don't worry, we're counseling today.
Okay, so, anyway, that's something that I know you and the executive have been very, very supportive of and really been very helpful in encouraging the local governments to really follow the direction that you've set for the county through Future LV, the regional plan. So just in the first quarter of 2021, we've done 86 reviews. And remember, there were like 250 or so last year. So if you look at the amount of development activity, if you stay on the same track, and again, most of this is private sector proposals, though there are some like school proposals, colleges, things like that, doing some work. But if you stay on the same track through the rest of the year, that could be a 16% increase over last year. And if you stay on the same track with the amount of acreage that's under pressure for development, that could be as much as a 51% increase. So that's something to be extremely mindful of, and something that we at the commission literally monitor like a hawk every day, because you want to reduce the amount of land being developed. Now, some of that also includes redevelopment lands and other things, but at the end of the day, a lot of this is greenfield development. What was really happening in Lehigh County 10 years ago or so is now they're full up and is really starting to move over here in earnest. So that's a whole new set of challenges. But you have the opportunity to make all sorts of difference through the commission and the local governments, as well as the county itself, to make sure that you're maintaining your quality of life in ways that your neighbors may not have. So last year, you had a record number of single-family detached. That shows a complete recovery from the housing downturn about a decade ago with 780. But the good news is you had a pretty good variety of housing types being proposed. So everything from row homes, which tend to be a little bit more family-oriented, to apartments. A lot of the apartment development was in Easton and Bethlehem, but in some other places as well. Some planned residential and some twins. And if you look at what's happened then in the first quarter, you're on track to meet that same demand. We know there's a housing shortage in this region today of at least 5,400 housing units, and that's our most conservative number. It could be as high as 8,500 units. So the fact that the private sector is trying to respond to that and make sure that we have housing is important. Now, the diversity of that housing is critical as well, because we also know that housing costs and housing values have outpaced incomes, and that is a huge challenge across every affordability sector in the market. At the beginning of this year, we released a full analysis of that. We have really cool online interactive maps. You can go take a look at them at lvpc.org. So you can search by census tract or municipality or the county, by school district. We cut it every way that might be useful for someone, so you can see how those values have changed. And I wanted to really thank the folks in your GIS department too, because they help get us the information to be able to do that type of analysis and have been fantastic in supporting the commission in that as well.
Were those folks from Northampton County?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, Joe.
The GIS folks
Yep.
from Northampton County?
Yeah,
Okay, great.
yep,
Thank you.
absolutely. Yeah, well, we work together. So
Yes.
they give us the data sets
So
and then we
just
go
wanted to
back.
clarify for
Yep.
everyone.
Yeah, it's a great partnership. And then when you get to non-residential, here's where it isn't a rainbow and a unicorn. Now, there's some good stuff here that happened in 2020. You had during a global pandemic, when everything was closed, you had over 500,000 square feet of general commercial being proposed. So that tells you that, still the market is very good here. Even had some small retail, largely components of other developments. Some office, and some transportation. And the recreational stuff is pretty great. That's a huge amount of square footage to be proposed in any given year at all for recreational. And that includes investments by the county itself, some of our municipal governments through like the Two River Trail Gap, the Cottingham Stadium in Easton. Those sorts of things factor into that number. And then the conversation that we have every day at the commission, warehouse and industrial. So we started dividing those two up. When plans come into us, and it says storage, warehouse, logistics, we'll mark it as warehouse, which we use as the general term for those sorts of things. All other forms of industrial, quarrying, manufacturing, fall into that I category or industrial. As you can see, warehouse development is really the largest portion of that overall industrial market, with over 4 million square feet last year proposed by the private sector. And then in terms of the first quarter, this is the part that really isn't, I really don't know how to say it, but you had real strong growth proposed by the private sector again for this first quarter. That's tough, because if you stay on track with the private sector proposing that same amount of industrial development across the rest of this year, that could be as much as 111% increase over a huge year of industrial growth pressure last year. So that's the real reality of the situation that every municipal government and the county is facing. And so, again, if it is not consistent with Future LV, the regional plan, these folks do a fantastic job every month of telling people, no, this is in conflict with what our community needs and also in conflict with county policy. Staff goes very far in describing why it's in conflict with that. But at the end of the day, the local governments have all the power to approve or deny.
Can I ask a clarification so I understand the chart?
Please.
You have industrial warehouse in parentheses with that. Is the industrial the overall, the 2571,293, but of that, 2,270,000 is warehouse?
Yes.
So really, if we take out the warehouses, we have only around 300,000 square foot of what I call job development. The rest is space development. Okay, I just wanted to be sure there weren't, because I thought, oh my God, it can't be 4 or 5 million total.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, I didn't explain that earlier.
You clarified it, thank you.
And so it's a really tough conversation because our infrastructure is not keeping up. If you don't have public sewer and water, you basically can't have manufacturing jobs. So what we're seeing a lot of developers come in and do, and this is where we've really been supporting municipal governments, is they'll come in and they'll go to the township supervisors or borough council or wherever they're at, and they'll say, hey, we're gonna create jobs, we're gonna do this manufacturing development. But then when the plans come in, it's all warehouse all the time. And so that's where the letters from the LVPC become important, because we call them on that. And another thing I'll get to in a minute that we've started doing this year to try and help balance that, which gets into some of the services that we provide beyond the review services for the county. We have 3 multi-municipal comprehensive plans going right now. NAS plan and Slate Belt did a little bit of a pause because of the pandemic, but the Nazareth area now has their draft set of goals, policies, and actions, so we're hoping to get them a final plan by Labor Day. That is an update to an existing plan, so they have already been amending their ordinances and the like along the way. The planned slate belt effort is a very important one because now the slate belt's starting to get a lot of pressure. The 10 communities there completely paused their effort. They're restarting it for in-person meetings in June. So that one we want to get done for them by the end of the year so they can start to then go into the next phase of that, which is their ordinance changes. And that's really the process in Pennsylvania under the law to do those things. And then the River Central Plan just kicked off in January. And that actually includes 3 communities in Northampton County, East Allen, Northampton Borough, and North Catasauqua boroughs, and then 2 communities in Lehigh County, and that's Catasauqua and Hanover. Township, Lehigh County. So they started their plan, about to put out their community survey, finished up their charrettes last month. So a lot of good work there that the commission's doing in support of the local governments with just their comprehensive planning efforts. And that allows us to then write in future LV policy into their local plans. And that's actually why they wanted us to do the plans, because they want to be consistent with the county policy. In terms of education, that's absolutely everything right now with the development pressure. So we have a couple of programs going there. The first one's our local technical assistance program. We do everything from traffic counts for local governments as well as monitoring traffic. When we have a large industrial development come in to our office for county planning review, we'll go and lay a counter to see how many vehicles are going through there now. And then if that local government approves it, and it gets built, we'll go back and lay counters again and again and again to monitor to see if their traffic impact statements are correct or not. So we can then go and report that to the local government, PennDOT, whomever we need to help those communities. We do a significant amount of public works training. Here's just 3 on the slide. We had one on communities were interested of like, where do we put bikeways? Are they safe? How do we do it? So we arranged that for the communities last week. And we have one on site distance in intersections and then roadside vegetation control. So that's really those public works support that the commission does to help the local governments. And then we've done direct technical assistance. This is just so far in 2021. Everything from a Smith Avenue safety study with the city of Easton to trail crossings in Forks Township. We're working on one right now with the county to set one up to do the Liberty Water Gap Trail project and see where we might be able to work on some traffic calming to support that trail development. We actually bring in personnel from the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation and a third-party engineer to assist those communities with those technical assistance as well. Everyone that Northampton County Communities has requested this year, we've done. So that's been really great and testament to the administration for sure that we've had 6 communities, 5 communities plus the county call and be able to move forward with those. We have all kinds of municipal training. All of your local planning commissioners and zoning hearing board members, they're volunteers. They're volunteering their time. They're really into public service in their communities, but they need to know what the law says and how to act as a zoning hearing board member, how to act as a local planning commission member. Also, what are the limits of the law? What can you and can't you do? So we do a whole series of training. We have one on the limits to zoning coming up just next week. And then we've got one coming up. We rebranded our planning and pizza, data and donuts, because you can't feed people anymore during a pandemic. And so anyway, we're calling them transformative talks. They're online. And we're working with DEP to do one on environmental regulations. So we're working on scheduling that right now. And the last slide. We've really changed how we do things. We adopted basically a no steering committee policy a few years ago when we were doing a future LV update on behalf of the counties. And so now we have a series of workshops that meet regularly. It's an open table philosophy. If you come, you're part. And that's really helped us tailor services and what can be useful and make our plans better. Next week, the Commission's Environment Committee will be looking at some climate action planning, and we just applied to the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection for a greenhouse gas modeling initiative. And then we're working towards some integrated water resource management. And then every watershed in every county is supposed to have a watershed management plan, or that Act 167 plan. We would like to update all of those in a global update. So we'll be coming back and asking for your support for that. DEP, we've been back and forth with them. They seem amenable to us doing that on a global basis. Otherwise, it would take us 10 years to do the hydrological modeling. But you get the idea of the types of things that we're doing. We kicked off on the industrial piece and industrial decision lens data and analysis tool project yesterday. That's actually at the request of Councilman McGee. He said, hey, where are these industrial buildings? What's in them? How many square feet? Where's this going? So we brought a bunch of partners together yesterday. We're going to loop back with the county in short order as well to let you know what they said. So everybody from LANTA to the Airport Authority to the Workforce Board to LVDC to talk about some of our freight issues and what information and tools we could build as a county planning commission and a metropolitan planning organization to support a better dialogue. And then you can,
There's one comment
oh,
that,
sorry, Greg.
there's one comment that,
Come to the microphone, please.
there's one comment in your presentation that needs to be said here publicly, just to get the impact of all this data. If CNN, Yahoo News, and what was the third entity?
Wall Street Journal.
Wall Street Journal, New York Times are doing stories on the impacts of the freight industry and the impacts of what it's having on obviously there's a good side in the sense it's providing some jobs, but there's also the downside on where these buildings are going and the extreme impacts it's having on infrastructure in local communities. It's the old saying, you know, that we want to prove and accept the development, but we also need to have the money train to come along to support the infrastructure to make it viable. But the point I wanted to make, the overall point here is, not only is we making local news, but when you look at the statistics here, I don't know if this is good or bad, but we are in the big time. I have family in Los Angeles, and they know what the Inland Empire is. It's the #1 warehouse freight spot in the United States. The Lehigh Valley is now #2. So that's where we are, folks. Now, what does that mean? That means we're experiencing pressures on infrastructure. We didn't even get into the environment, which I know the county executive has been exemplary in his concerns about air quality and the impacts it's having on the environment. That issue we're just beginning to tackle on the impacts with CO2 gases, nitrogen oxide from diesel trucks and so on. I don't want to get into the weeds, but that's the perspective of what we have here, folks. We are #2, and we need to figure out where and what we're going to do with this industry, which, by the way, is transitioning to robots anyway. So those who are concerned about labor and jobs, the other factor here that isn't mentioned too often is that this industry is moving to robots anyway. But that's fact. That's not a bias. It's there. It's happening now. There's huge warehouses that only have 5 people in them. And the aisles are narrower, not because they're worried about Johnny and Mary, worker. They want them to be the right size so the robot can go through them more efficiently. But I guess I got into the weeds. But I wanted you to experience the numbers and where we are here in Lehigh Valley. And that my concluding comment is, I appreciate the support of the county executive and this body for your support historically. And thank you very much.
Thank you, President Zabrowski.
You have any questions for the body?
Oh, yeah, are we done with the presentation?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Open the questions.
Yeah, so I see Mr. Heckman, I see Mr. Myers. I'm just gonna comment first, quickly. The Lehigh Valley Planning Commission not having the teeth to stop some of this or change the direction of where it's going, right? So we all know that's an issue. There was one project that was recently rejected by the Planning Commission on Route 329 and Airport Road, correct? Are they still moving forward with that project? Because I heard they are. There's businesses there, and, you know, we did what we could do, right?
Well, the developer intends to move forward with it. East Allen is in the process of negotiating that.
Okay.
The good news is East Allen is in that River Central plan, so we're able to really work with the township on a day-to-day basis. That one's really interesting because it's a bunch of.
Walking trail?
Yeah, it's a bunch of individual buildings that they want to evict the businesses, tear it all down and build one giant warehouse there instead. Yet there's a vacant warehouse that's been vacant for over a year just right up the road. And so, you know, anyway, I'll stop.
Within a 5-mile radius, there's probably 4, 5, or 6 vacant warehouses. So when the trucks come in, 329, 248, 512, 946 are in a real world of hurting. So I'll leave it there. Mr. Heckman.
Thank you. And, you know, you're bringing up, sometime we'll have to have you back. You got put on we're on a big agenda now, and I know there's a meeting, so hopefully they can come back again because these are big issues, but I'll try to be really brief. The thing I saw that was a big deal, and you mentioned it, was the apartments outpacing all other affordable housing. My concern is this, and I brought this up before when Mayor of Easton was here, because he was talking about luxury apartments. Everything's a luxury apartment now. I mean, if you have 2 chairs, a wall, it's a luxury apartment in the Lehigh Valley until a year later and you notice it's not so luxury. But the thing is, I'm concerned because I call it the donut hole. The gentrification's out of control. I mean, you have the very poor have subsidies and different things. Not that they're doing great, but there is help. The wealthy don't care. What you have are the people in the middle who, and there's a lot of them with all kinds of education, all kinds of jobs, because people assume now that what I did when I was a kid, well, we didn't, but the fast food joints, well, those are jobs for kids, and we don't have any jobs. There's people 40 years old working in fast food places or Wawas, and they can't afford the housing in the Lehigh Valley, especially Northampton County. It's getting ridiculous. So that's one area that really concerns me, and I don't know if you track the rents for apartments, and you don't have to get into it now because I know Mr. Myers has a meeting that he wants to get started. But the thing is, so I'd love to hear about her. I'll contact you. Maybe you can give me some of that information. And the other thing is, and with your board, I applaud the board. You've come a long way from when I was on it. It seems like you have a lot more cooperation with the townships. They don't throw you out anymore. So that's a good that's a good thing. But I know the big thing, people throw their hands up in the air, the township officials, and they say, well, it's the law. What can we do? We have some lawyers sitting in this room. The law is the law until someone challenges it and they actually win. Oh, they bring in high-powered lawyers. You should see these lawyers they bring in from New York or L.A. So what? So what? If a guy went to law school and he has some experience, we have, you know, I think sometimes it's an excuse, and that really bothers me. We can't do anything about it. What do you want us to do? It costs too much. And I think going forward, we're going to have to think how we can do that. And that applies to the state, too. If they say, well, the zoning doesn't allow it. I used to be a single-issue guy with health care. For my state people now, I'm going to become a single-issue guy on development. I don't care what party they are. I don't care who they are. If you're going to pretend and hide your head in the sand, you know, and hand out cards, I'm a state rep. So what? Do something about this. The Lehigh Valley, our representation has to get on the ball because we're getting killed. I mean, I have people talk to me all the time. You mentioned infrastructure. Bill mentioned 329. These roads weren't created for these trucks. And it's just a shame. So I really want to get into some of the weeds with you, but I don't want to bore everybody here. And we're not even touching on the environment, which is all getting screwed up.
Right.
So we really have to get into this. I mean, it's just so many excuses. We can't do it. It's the law. you don't understand. I've been around a long time. I understand very well. I understand when somebody's blowing you off because they don't want to do the work and when somebody actually is concerned. So I hope whatever we can do as a valley to push some of these agenda issues forward. We really have to. The warehouse infrastructure thing is just off the charts right now, off the charts.
And we have some good lawyers in the room. That includes you, Mr. Spadoni. And
You can if you want to.
our county executive, outstanding lawyer. He's a good friend, and I'm allowed some levity with Mr. Spadoni. I want to give you some perspective on that concern, because these are serious issues. No kidding aside. We wrench our hands and go home many evenings after meetings just shaking our heads. We are operating, and this might make some sense to the lawyers in the room. We are operating in the state of Pennsylvania with 19th century development laws. And they who practice know what I mean. You have development rights supersede in many cases. The law has not caught up. New Jersey, Maryland, New York have altered some of their development laws. So you have a right to build. The question is, you can't say no. The question gets back to zoning, planning on where and how you manage it. But this is a right to develop state, and our laws usually back up development.
Just have to keep fighting.
Mr. Myers.
Preacher's done.
Okay. Ron didn't mention not much affordable housing. I do realize that there is an affordable housing project going up on the South Side East, and John Robinson's left for us to deal with. My question, I have a couple of questions. One of them is, how are we approaching the 13th Street super warehouse that they plan on putting in Easton? Yeah, they're putting a monster warehouse at 13th. They tore down the Pfizer. How are we handling that, or is Easton just letting them get away with it?
Please step up to the mic, Ms. Bradley.
Try to answer that.
I'm the Easton guy, so I want to know.
I know that's a loaded question, and you know I was a planning director in Easton for a long time, and you know how much I love Easton. So they're obviously in a tricky position there because it is currently industrial, and so they would be continuing the use. And unless their zoning definitions changed, they probably don't have a lot of ability to say no. What they do have the ability to do is negotiate for how it looks, transportation improvements around there, including substantial improvements to 13th Street, that intersection there, other places. And then PennDOT will definitely need to get involved in that conversation. Again, it's right in the middle of the process right now. And I'm pretty sure you've probably talked to Sal about it. But if you
Our
haven't.
conversations aren't done.
If you haven't, I would say early and often there with that, because this is not what they ever expected.
Yeah, and traffic's not, it can't handle what they want to do.
That's right.
Okay, the other issue,
Silk mill is a stretch.
you've given a beautiful presentation. There's one aspect of this thing that I'm not catching. What's with the medical? There's nothing thrown in here as support. I realize that they're building this marvelous campus on Hecktown Road, but, you know, if they keep doing what we're doing, how medically are we going to handle it? They're putting a helipad now at Muhlenberg. You know, where are we going with this? Are we getting any inputs from the hospitals to you people on what they're doing with that?
Well, we spend a lot of time with EMS, so ambulance service, police, fire. The health networks are, yes, we talk to them quite a bit. They're expanding quite a bit. They're in intense competition with each other, as you're well aware. They're expanding their services because their need is expanding as well, especially as a result of the pandemic. So I think they're just kind of in the middle of it. But that's where I think these public health conversations become so very important, and the work of the counties through the county EMS, through everything at Graysdale and the like is important, because there's a lot of good leadership there, and having some of those direct dialogues as those facilities transition in the interrelationship of those things.
Okay, I'm done.
Ms. Fargo Hefner.
I have a question about your staffing, because you've referenced we did this, we did, that. Who is your actual staff? Because I realize the board itself is made up of people from different municipalities, et cetera, but who actually does these trainings and, like, what's your staff configuration?
Sure. There's 20 of us, and that's the same size staff we've had since the 1970s, though the population has nearly doubled. And so we have community planners, 2 community planners. We have 3 environmental planners. We're in the process of hiring a new civil stormwater engineer. We have a transportation planning staff. And that is actually largely funded through federal and state money as our role as a metropolitan planning organization, which is different than the county planning organization. However, you benefit from it. And then we have, small group of folks in the administration, which is, me and Tracy and Bruce.
So are these full-time staff people? Are they contracted? Are they
Oh,
part-time?
we're full-time. Yep.
So they come to you, they're only engineering and planning for you and your projects?
Correct. Correct. Yeah, we rarely hire consultants. We don't have the funds to do that, and we don't have the need to do that. If we can do it ourselves, we're going to do it.
So you say you fund your staff through federal and state dollars?
Plus county dollars, yes.
So our contributions are going to your staff funding?
Correct.
I don't know if this is a question or if it's a comment. I guess I'm going to try to phrase it as a question because someone mentioned it and I don't know if I heard the answer. I have concern about the teeth of things. And you stated it yourself this evening that, we can make a very strong recommendation. No, there's a project locally where I live that I'll come out and said, absolute no. It's moving forward anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So now what?
Well, it's a local government made that decision. But what we've started doing, and it's here on the slide this year, is for land uses of regional significance. As soon as those come in, we automatically put together a project meeting with whatever the community is, borough, township, city, the like, any associated partners, so a sewer, a water authority, PennDOT, Lanta, whomever it needs to be. And so we can make sure that we're bringing people together so they know that this is happening and so they can coordinate improvements, and then that stuff can actually get into our letters. Because that's what it's doing, is it's building a coalition of people that actually understand how it's all fitting together and what their role in that is, what bucket of water they carry. Because often what happens is developers will come in, they'll go to PennDOT and say we're doing X, but then they'll go to the township and they'll say we're doing Y. They don't add up to Z. And so one of the things that we do is we figure out whether it's truthful or not. A lot of our municipal governments are relying heavily on us, especially to review the traffic impact statements, make sure the calculations are correct. I think Councilmember McGee and Councilmember Lott have probably reviewed way too many assessments where we're telling people their traffic calculations are completely wrong. But we're trying to stop that insanity. Because, sorry.
We should add, to get to the nub of that question, there's been a turf war for 40 years between the commissioners and the local governments and the planning agencies. By that I mean that's part of the answer to your question. The Lehigh Valley Planning Agency, based on the Pennsylvania Municipal Code, does not have the authority to reject that plan outright. We can recommend, we can chastise, we can use the bully pulpit, we could intimidate with procedurally, giving them strategies, and we're trying to up our game on that. But from some of the gentlemen and ladies who have served on the commission, meaning the Planning Commission, they've broached that subject for years, and it comes down to simply the local governments do not want to give up their authority to make those decisions. So we have a turf war here. And it's been going on for a long while. And, but I think it might be to the point where it needs to be looked at, just like I suggested the development laws in the state of Pennsylvania need to be looked at, meaning most of the states have updated most of the states like New Jersey, Maryland, New York, their planning commissions have a little bit more teeth, to answer your question.
I mean, as a resident of a community and not just sitting up here in this seat, it's just disconcerting because you hear people that are concerned about landfills and warehouses and all kinds of things, and yet they go, too bad, we're doing it. And we all know how that happens, you know, it's election season, we get it. But I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I mean, I do believe that there's real good happening here, and I don't want to just be dismissive, but I get very disheartened when I see, well, we absolutely said no, and then it happens anyway. So then it's like, well, you know, it feels defeatist. I guess I have one other question, and there are times that Lehigh Valley is sponsoring different events. So where do the funds for those sponsorships come from?
It depends on what you're talking about. If it's transportation related, we're required to do engagement with a variety of types of communities, and that's covered from our state and federal funds, which is where like our chamber sponsorship comes from. And there's nothing that we do with the chamber in our current agreement where we are not a speaker or a direct engagement partner.
What do you mean by that last statement?
Like, for example, we'll sponsor the Transportation Summit with the Chamber, along with Lanta and the Airport Authority and PennDOT. And then we all get time on the mic to talk about what we're doing. We get to drive the agenda of those. And then we get to then ultimately communicate with the business community and have two-way dialogue that way. So those are the types of things that we do in order to stay in conformance with federal law, especially in regards to transportation. There are other times we'll just negotiate for sponsorships on things because we're doing work, like providing data for something for someone, but we're not giving them any funds. So it just depends on specifically what it is and what we're doing. We do a lot of our own events to get word out or to get dialogue going, so.
And are all those fees, they're reported in your annual report and they're broken down? Which is federal, which is state?
It is in our audit, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Lott?
Regarding Mr. Heckman's statement, he made quite a statement, but one of the things he was concerned about is the excuses. And everybody in this room realizes that we as council don't have anything to do with zoning, and you guys don't have the teeth, the planning commission doesn't have the legal teeth to enforce it. So a lot of times it's, you know, wheeling and dealing with the developer to get what we want. More so, it's wheeling and dealing at the local level who does have all the legal authority to do this. So when I was gonna go back to Ron, he said, you know, excuses are made out there. And I know this is purely off the top of your head, but when our small communities come back to you and say, yeah, we agree with you, we didn't want this, but we can't afford to fight it. Is that 50% of municipalities come back to you and, as maybe it's an excuse, but I actually believe that. I believe a developer can bury a small municipality, and that's why I think the whole system's broke. We got this whole thing going down to the smallest component, and they're supposed to fight it on behalf of everyone. You know, that little township, I believe, will be broke fighting a developer, a good developer. So I guess my question, because I wanted to say a question, is how often does the municipality or the township or borough come back and say, we didn't want them, but we couldn't fight it? I mean, is that really the reason?
You're absolutely right. And, you know, one of the things that we do all the time, and this is a really important role of the commission, is if we know the law is not going to let them deny it because it was zoned that way and Pennsylvania is a right to develop state, that's where we'll go in and say, okay, well, here's the things that the law allows you to negotiate for. So if you've got to accept something that you don't want, here's how you make it as good as possible. And a lot of our communities are responding better to that. But, you know, the other 50% on the whole denying a plan piece that's out there that no one really wants to talk about, but I feel like I can say it. There's a lot of communities that want the tax revenue because they don't know how to balance their budget on the current rateables or the revenues that they're getting. Developers are very smart, especially industrial developers, will come in and say, this is how many, you know, dollars per year we're gonna put into your municipal budget. And it makes it really hard for those township supervisors or those borough council people to say no. And where we really spend a lot of time is trying to make sure they just don't roll over and say, scratch my belly like a dog. And that's the honest to God truth. At the end of the day, we can't control what they do, but we can absolutely influence it, and that's where we spend our time. And that's why we just have to stay optimistic and absolutely never, ever, ever give up.
Following up on Ms. Fargo Hefner's question, and I am the liaison for Planning Commission. I know Mr. Lott's been on there for a long time, and probably some of the other folks served there. And I wanted to, Mr. Zabrowski does a great job. Your staff does fantastic. You guys are always trying to stay ahead of the curve. But back on Lori's question, on Ms. Fargo Hefner's question, you know, the budget, right? How's your budget? And, you know, I know you don't come in front of us a lot. So I think that's more where she was going with her question, because, you know, it's coming in the fall. And, you know, a platinum sponsor, do we have to be a platinum sponsor? I mean, I think maybe the message should be, you know, getting it out to the community that, hey, what can we do to stop this? Because there's 7 or 8 warehouses that do not have trucks. And that's where I was going on the Planning Commission with the study. They need to do a virtual, when these trucks pull into these plants and start moving around, where are our kids going to be driving? How are they going to get to work? Maybe they'll all be working from home then. I don't know. But, you know, the infrastructure, the money, I mean, just saying, you know, it's great to engage, and I know the money, I don't know if it's county money or not, we don't know, but it's not county money. Well, then maybe the transportation, maybe that money could have done a couple of things, and, you know, so just.
$10,000 out of a $2.3 million.
Okay, well, but maybe you know, community awareness. Our supervisor, I know you're doing supervisor trainings. Apparently, there's some people running for some supervisor positions because of this, I'm hearing, so. But, right, so maybe that's a good thing. I mean, not saying that the incumbents aren't doing their job, but, so,
Chairman?
yes.
Is this, I mean, ultimately, from what I've heard, this is really at the state level. I mean, they've got to change the law. I'm sorry, this is state level, they have to change the law. I mean, and I didn't mean to demean the township people, right? I get it. I mean, I guess I get that, like, thing in my spine because it gets me in trouble now and then. But, you know, like somebody comes in and they, you know, we're all in and say, well, we've got lawyers coming from boom, 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 boom. It's like, all right, well, fine, let's take you on, see what happens. But I realize that may not be the right move. That being said, I realize they're up against it. It's the state, and I think whatever we do, we can't, I think these guys are trying to do the best they can.
Sure.
And the townships, some of them, you're right. I remember the 80s, Bethlehem Township said, we're open, and boy, were they open. I mean, you know, Mr. McClure, I say, they had water runoff issues before they knew what to do with it. So the thing is, but, you know, but they learn, and time goes on, and I think they're pretty responsible now. But it is a quick way. Townships like to say we never raise taxes. Well, one way you do that is you invite anybody in that wants to build something. We got to get to the state, because at some point, they're the ones that have to take the ball on this. And I don't know how that happens. I don't know if we got to pressure our representatives at a bipartisan level in the Lehigh Valley and say, put something there, say, hey, what's your position on this? And if they say, well, there's nothing I can do, well, then maybe their replacement can do something more. So, I mean, I really, I don't want to jump on the local people, because I realize it's a tough thing. But the state really has got to step up to the plate on this.
Yeah, and I think one of the points that you're making is really important about the state, because these issues are unique to this area of the state. The other parts of the state are losing population, and they think this right to develop thing is going to save them. And so that's been the real rubbing point. I don't think you could speak to a single professional planner anywhere in the Commonwealth that wouldn't agree with you that Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code might have been good in 1968 when it was adopted, but it's old and done now.
Well, we see how many are out there now, but these 2021s are the ones that didn't get built yet.
I know.
So, and the 20 ones didn't all get built, right?
Correct.
So there's a lot coming. And I just think maybe more public advocacy with some of those dollars to inform people what they can do. It's not that we don't want them not to develop, but maybe they need to put them in places where they're more sustainable, off the highway, more infrastructure. But we do have yeah.
The irony is, Bill, the irony of that is the state just gave us an award for planning for future LV. And in the future LV plan, it says regionally, the Lehigh Valley should not put these except near interstate or state roads. So, you know, great job, here's an award. But we're going to encourage and market this industry because it's dollars and shekels even for the state. So there's some hypocrisy going on here. And the infrastructure right now, this gentleman who spoke, Mr. Stout from the Airport Authority, he's right in the biggest bottleneck going on right there. And the bottom line is the infrastructure has to be supported, not by you and not by the townships and supervisors. It's got to be supported by state dollars.
Well, on that note, we appreciate all the Planning Commission does for us. We do have some functional business that we must complete before the next 20 minutes. Thank you. Motion to adjourn. Thank you. Mr. Myers, you are up, and I apologize for taking too long.
We're going to need a 5 or 10 minute break.
They stacked up the agenda on me.
Well, we'll re-adjourn at 10 minutes after, 5 minutes after? Okay, 5-minute break.